In the year 1999, a phenomenal event occurred in the skies which altered the course of human history.
It's always eat or be eaten out in the battlefield, no matter who or what you're up against.
I have only spared you from total dissolution.
The aliens have taken hostages and are controlling their bodies. Listen, Ulala, we're taking off by Astrobeat spaceship right now.
Roger.
Oh yeah! This could be fun!
Look at you, hacker. A pathetic creature of meat and bones.
I can foretell many things in the future. So, let's see your future.
The 90s saw its share of fads and trends. Some caught on, some fell into obscurity, some withstood the test of time for multiple generations, like the Pokemon franchise. Beginning in Japan in 1996 with the release of Pokemon Red and Green, followed by an updated version with Pokemon Blue. It wasn't until the first international release of Pokemon in 1998 that the franchise would be the beginning of one of the biggest global phenomenons in gaming. The franchise would be even further pushed with the second generation, Pokemon Gold and Silver. But what would it take for Gold and Silver to match the hype and the popularity of the first generation? More colors, more Pokemon, and more programming opportunities would push what was possible, not just for Pokemon, but for portable games as a whole. It all began with Satoshi Tajiri. As a child, he was a bug hunting enthusiast. Hunting and catching bugs wasn't enough. He studied the different types of bugs throughout his childhood, and even learned how to raise different bugs. Growing up in a rural area, it was easy for him to find time to hunt bugs, but as he grew older, his hometown was developed so much it took away much of the habitat the bugs had, making it difficult for a young teenage Tajiri to enjoy his hobby. Lucky for him, a new interest would catch his eye: arcade games. He was specifically interested in Taito's Space Invaders. He was so interested in Space Invaders that it would inspire him to produce the fanzine Game Freak. At the time, there weren't any publications dedicated to game tips, so by coming up with his own, he was able to make a profit off his own interests and passion. Tajiri caught the attention of a young Ken Sugimori, who offered to do illustrations for Game Freak. The two would work together until they were motivated to actually make a game themselves. Tajiri took apart his Famicom to learn how it worked to help him develop his future programming skills. He had also learned how to use the Famicom Family Basic to learn how to make games. After a few years, he learned enough to produce his first game, Quinty, released in the States as Mendel Palace. Quinty was inspired by Xevious, a game that Tajiri wrote many of his Game Freak issues about, which gave him the most attention. Because of how successful Xevious issues were, he pitched the game to Namco, where Xevious was developed and published. The pitch was successful, and Game Freak went from being a fanzine publication to a video game development studio. Tajiri and Sugimori were also joined in the studio's founding by Junichi Masuda. Masuda, who also enjoyed bug hunting as a child, would spend his high school years as a musician who studied classical music. Game Freak was officially founded as a developer in April 1989, and 3 months later, Quinty, aka Mendel Palace, was released. During the development and release of their first game, Tajiri discovered Nintendo's first portable system, the Game Boy, and immediately upon seeing what it could do, An idea for another game was formed in his mind, a game inspired by his childhood bug collecting, as well as his fascination with the capsule monsters of Ultra 7, one of his favorite shows to watch as a child. He was also inspired by him and Masuda working together to find a rare item drop in Dragon Quest II, and wishing they could trade in the game. These childhood passions came together to form the first ideas of what would become Pokemon. Tajiri pitched the idea of Pokemon to Nintendo, and the idea was not only approved, but it gave Tajiri the opportunity to learn more about game design from Shigeru Miyamoto, who designed so many of Nintendo's popular franchises throughout the 80s. While Pokemon was being developed, Game Freak would work on smaller titles, like Jerry Boy aka Smart Ball, Yoshi, Mario and Wario, and Pulseman. It was a tough development period, producing something as ambitious as a game like Pokemon during the first half of the Game Boy's life. Game Freak had almost run out of money, and Tajiri struggled to pay the staff that did not quit on him during production. Luckily, Game Freak got financial assistance from a man who would be most integral to the Pokemon franchise, Tsunekazu Ishihara. Ishihara got his start in the game industry working with Game Freak. In 1995, Ishihara founded Creatures Inc. as a successor to Ape Inc., the development studio responsible for the mother franchise. They became the company that helped finance development of Pokemon Red and Green to help Game Freak avoid bankruptcy in exchange for 1/3 of the game's revenue. In 1996, Pokemon Red and Green was finally released. However, there was initial concern that the games would not sell as well due to lack of interest in promoting the game. But the games still caught on to young children who favored the still affordable Game Boy and the game that encouraged them to catch them all. Later that year, a third version of Pokemon was released, Pokemon Blue, which included new art and new dialogue. Pokemon Blue would serve as the basis for the international release of Pokemon Red and Blue. What helped Game Freak maintain interest in the game early on was Tajiri revealing the existence of Mew, the 151st Pokemon, after all the marketing pushing only 150 Pokemon to find. The rumors on how to catch Mew motivated Nintendo to do a special distribution event, which at the time was the only way anyone could add Mew to the game. Pokemon had branched out into a trading card game that launched the same month as the Japanese Pokemon Blue in October 1996, and an anime series in 1997 featuring an original protagonist named after Tajiri himself and his partner Pokemon, Pikachu. Satoshi the character would be renamed Ash Ketchum outside of Japan. 1998 would be the year that Pokemon would become a global phenomenon, with millions poured into marketing from Nintendo of America. September 1998 would mark the international debut of Pokemon, first with the anime series airing on syndicated television.
Please don't come any closer to me! Pika, pika.
And then with the North American release of Pokemon Red and Blue, with the rest of the world getting the games the following month. In July 1998, Pokemon would have its first theatrical release in Japan, Mewtwo Strikes Back. All the licensed media and merchandise can be traced to one man, Tsunekazu Ishihara. Ishihara and Creatures Inc. became the go-to for Pokemon media and merchandising, and would assist in the financing in the development of the Pokemon games. Finally, in September 1998 in Japan, Game Freak released another updated version of the first Pokemon games, Pokemon Yellow, a version of the game that was more inspired by the anime, making Pikachu your first Pokemon, and scenarios where you fought the anime version of Team Rocket from time to time. Pokemon Yellow was released in North America and Australia in 1999, and Europe in 2000. But while the rest of the world was getting ready to be introduced to Pokemon, Game Freak had already been at work on the direct sequels, Gold and Silver.
そしてなんといっても今回一番の盛り上がりを見せていたのがこちら。来年の3月発売予定のポケモン金銀。アサリども早速体験してみた。
Gold and Silver was publicly revealed in November 1997 at Nintendo Space World. Gold and Silver was promoted as being more than just a small update to the first game. It would be a brand new Pokemon experience taking advantage of the Game Boy Color hardware in multiple ways, going beyond the opportunity to add more colors and quality of life improvements to the gameplay itself. The sequel also touted an internal clock that operated in real time that would change which Pokemon appeared in the game and whether the game took place during the day or night. Gold and Silver also introduced many gameplay elements that would become staples of the entire franchise. Thanks to the Game Boy Color, a new variant of Pokemon was introduced. This variant would give each Pokemon a different color palette. The Pokemon with the different color palette were extremely rare to obtain, except for the red Gyarados, which served as an introduction to this concept. It had been referred to as Shiny Pokemon unofficially until the name became canon with the start of the Generation 4 titles, Diamond and Pearl. Eggs were introduced to give players opportunities to hatch new Pokemon, as well as breed Pokemon that would inherit unique stats and attacks that couldn't normally be attained simply by catching them in the wild. Berries and other items were introduced for Pokemon to hold onto and use during battle. The Steel and Dark types were introduced, bringing the total of Pokemon types to 17 at the time. The Pokemon franchise would not introduce another new type until 2013 with the Fairy type in Pokemon X and Y. On top of all that, Gold and Silver would add 100 brand new Pokemon to the game, in addition to allowing the original 151 Pokemon to exist in the game as well without compromise. Gold and Silver was originally targeted for November 1998 to coincide with the end of the anime's first season. However, Game Freak had been sidetracked with the development of other games, like Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64. Shifting focus to develop this game, in addition to preparing for the international release of Red and Blue, made it even harder for Game Freak to develop Gold and Silver. But that wouldn't stop Game Freak. To help make development smooth, they sought the assistance of one of the most legendary programmers at Nintendo's disposal, Satoru Iwata.
On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer.
Satoru Iwata made a name for himself as a programmer for HAL Laboratory, who would occasionally step in to help Nintendo with their games. His resume includes Balloon Fight, NES Open Tournament Golf, Earthbound, and many more. During the development of the Pokemon franchise, Iwata would become the president of HAL Laboratory. He would still find time to assist in programming, describing himself as more of a programmer than a president. His contributions to the Pokemon franchise made it possible for it to become a global phenomenon in the first place. When no one believed that it would be possible to localize the first generation while simultaneously working on Gold and Silver, Iwata believed and volunteered his programming services to figure out how the game could easily be localized. For Pokemon Stadium, Iwata managed to convert the battle system data from the Game Boy games to the Nintendo 64, and it only took him a week to do it. As for Gold and Silver, fearing that Gold and Silver would run out of memory, Iwata shared with Game Freak data compressing tools that helped improve the speed of the games, which had already included so much compared to what the first generation had offered. It was a modified version of what was used to help make Earthbound run as smoothly as it did. It had been rumored that Iwata's contributions to Gold and Silver helped them fit the entire Kanto region from the first games into Gold and Silver. But while Iwata did give Game Freak data compression tools, they weren't used to increase the memory and space of the game itself. Rather, the game's memory had been increased by default. The first generation used a 0.5 megabyte cartridge, while Gold and Silver would be a whole megabyte, giving them all the room needed to add everything that they did, including the Kanto region. Iwata's tools helped the game actually keep up with all the data that had been put into Gold and Silver. Gold and Silver would finally be released in Japan in November 1999, with an international release throughout the early 2000s. Like with the first generation, the games would be directed by Satoshi Tajiri, with Ken Sugimori as one of the artists, and Junichi Masuda as the composer, who also assisted in the development of the game itself. In Japan, the game had sold nearly 1.5 million copies in the first month alone. In December 2000 in Japan, and the rest of the world a year later, a third version of the second generation games was released, Pokemon Crystal. This update added quality of life improvements, animated sprites, a new subplot to the story, integration of the Japan-only mobile system GP, which was an early precursor to online trading in Pokemon games, and it was the first to be directed by composer Junichi Masuda. To help maintain interest in the game, yet another mythical Pokemon would be revealed the same way Mew was revealed in the first generation of games. Celebi was revealed as the second Pokemon that could only be legitimately obtained at the time by an official Nintendo-sanctioned event. That event wouldn't take place until the 2000 Nintendo Space World in August, 9 months later. Success of the second generation of games led to an influx of new media and licensing requests to Tsunekazu Ishihara. This led him to the founding of a brand new company that could handle all marketing and management of the Pokemon intellectual property, the Pokemon Company. To this day, the Pokemon Company has worked closely with Nintendo to produce all releases of Pokemon media, games, movies, toys, manga, cards. All of it was handled jointly by Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. Ishihara continues to lead the Pokemon Company and serves as the face of all things related to the promotion of Pokemon. Junichi Masuda continued to work for Game Freak and the Pokemon franchise in various roles, including but not limited to director, composer, and producer, until leaving them to join the Pokemon Company in 2022 as their Chief Creative Fellow. Ken Sugimori and Satoshi Tajiri continue to work in Game Freak and continue to lend their expertise in the development of the Pokemon franchise. Satoru Iwata would eventually become the president of Nintendo in 2002 and the CEO of Nintendo of America in 2013. He would remain in those positions until his untimely passing in 2015. It is said that one of the last things he worked on was providing feedback for the development of Pokemon Go, expressing excitement for the possibility of children having an affordable way to play Pokemon compared to the mainline games. In Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, there is a hidden tribute to Iwata that could be found by talking to the Shigeki Morimoto NPC in the Game Freak building with a Pokemon imported from the Virtual Console version of Pokemon Gold and Silver. 10 years after the release of Gold and Silver, a remake of the games was released for the Nintendo DS, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. This remake enhanced the graphics to make them on par with what was presented in Generation 4 games, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. It also included every Pokemon introduced up to that point that could be obtained in the game via trading or through promotional events. Extra content such as online trading and battling, and rematches with gym leaders and Elite Four members added replay value to the game. Each copy of Heart Gold and Soul Silver included a Pokewalker. The Pokewalker was a pedometer that allowed players to import one of their Pokemon into the device to collect watts from walking to be exchanged for in-game unlockables. The first generation of Pokemon games set the tone for the potential this franchise would be. The second generation solidified Pokemon's mark in the world and in video games. Generations of games and generations of fans continue to support and breathe life into the world of Pokemon. Whether they are a collector, a fighter, a speedrunner, whether they like the games, the anime, the manga, the card games, or all of the above, Pokemon offered something for all types of fans, young and old. Gold Silver Crystal pushed the limits on what constituted as the pinnacle Pokemon experience, and the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes reminded fans that even the pinnacles of the Pokemon experience could be pushed even further. And in this Silver Age of Pokemon Gold and Silver, the second generation is still regarded as either one of the best generations, or even the generation that younger Pokemon fans started their journey in.
Game Boy Color.
ポケモンって RPG だったんだ。捕まえた。みっけ。どっちに行こう。すっごい。初めてなのに懐かしい。そんな旅に出会えるの。行け。これなんだろう。
可愛いポケモンとロールプレイングゲームの旅へ。
かわいい。
ポケットモンスター金銀。
あなたも始めてみませんか？
Ihadolka is a being capable of existing in multiple dimensions at one time, and she threatens the world of Ipreseru, Happy Island. Though the cost was heavy, the inhabitants of Ipreseru were able to temporarily confine Ihadolka in Evil Zone. But the danger is not over. Ihadolka must be destroyed before she emerges from Evil Zone. To do this, Ipreseru called upon mighty warriors from other worlds. A tournament is held to select the strongest warrior to face Ihadolka. These warriors have many reasons for wanting to fight Ihadolka, but right now, they are warriors. Let the battle begin.
Don't blame yourself. In this world, justice will prevail.
Errol, just wait a little while. I promise I'll be back.
All right, Al. But I'm not going to forgive you if it doesn't have a happy ending.
I know, Errol.
You lost, even though you tried to show your manliness. Or did I just make you dizzy with my beauty?
Damn, you're pretty sure of yourself, you ponytailed brat.
What? Did you say something?
Oh, no, nothing.
I'm relieved. I think you can destroy her. You have to make sure she gets killed, okay? So long.
Well, it seems it's getting serious after all. That's good. Be patient, Sayaka. I'll soon be home.
What are you?
Let's see. There were monkeys that evolved into men, and there were other monkeys that didn't. Therefore, there is man like you, and there is an existence like us that evolved from man. Do you understand?
Can it be true? It's impossible to believe.
It's true. Do you think that man is the ultimate point of evolution? Hello? You're not listening.
Ha! I made a fool of you. You can't get me.
Daybreaker. Amika, at a place like this, You must know your limitations. Do you understand me?
Well, well, now it's useless.
Sorry for hurting you.
Don't worry. I'm okay. I'm happy to be your shield.
I don't know how to say thank you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Once in the past, I bid farewell. My parting words were only a cluster of hollow sounds, as I did not know how to express my feelings. I made a grave choice then. That is why I am Ihadulka. Evil Zone, the confinement area. Episode 1 is Gorgeous Goddess. I want a kiss in the dark.
So you are claiming Mr. Randall yelled, "You're in my house now, Dorothy. Your mama can't save you now"?
You're mine, boy.
And then he called you a little schoolgirl? Is that true, Mr. Randall?
No, Your Honor. I simply said he looked better in a little schoolgirl's uniform.
NFL Extreme 2, with all the bone-crunching, smack-talking arcade action you'd expect from pro football's best players.
Bailiff, remove this wuss from my courtroom.
I think she's wrapping up in there. Hi, I got a bit delirious just now. I thought this was my room, but it's not. So sorry.
Does Monsieur need help?
Oh, no. No, don't worry about me.
Monsieur, it is you again.
I believe this is not your room either, n'est-ce pas?
It's not. Gosh darn it, those two staircases from the lobby keep getting me all muddled.
You are the first guest to have such trouble, monsieur. Perhaps it would be wise to check the number on the door before entering,
There you go. Good idea.
Let me walk you out.
That might provoke an interesting response. Hey, that should work. I don't think that's going to get me into a vineyard. That might provoke an interesting response. That might provoke an interesting response. I'm starting to really hate this place. Guess we'll try this funky one.
Very well. We will.
No, I'll go first. I insist.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
I'm gonna try this one.
Damn, that sucks.
This is the day you have trained for, the day you have studied for. Utilize your superior skills, your superior intelligence.
Sit down, rodent!
Sarah, baby!
Oh, you were one fly.
Don't make me hurt you. Learn to defeat your ruthless enemy, Steve of Hackensack.
Ryan, you're gonna get roofed.
Shut up, quadruped.
Sega Dreamcast. It's thinking.
Good shot!
That's so wonderful.
Nice shot!